Welcome back to Norfolk Superior Court, where the curtain defense is trending, and the family dog has apparently sought political asylum. After a week of watching the Alberts navigate shifting timelines, it's clear 34 Fairview was either the quietest house in Massachusetts, or the entire neighborhood was under a sleeping spell. The warm-up is over. Nicole Albert's shock and confusion alibi is in the rearview mirror, and the man who knows how to throw a punch has arrived. Brian Albert, a 30-year veteran allegedly sound asleep while a fellow officer died 30 feet from his bedroom window, has taken the stand. With a scale model of the property now in evidence, it's time for a Monday morning showdown. Grab your coffee. Let's see if the patriarch's story holds up under the weight of a 9-second phone call and a basement door only 4 steps from the truth. Welcome in, everybody. Before we get started, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. You know, all the YouTubey things. Forget what you think you know about justice. Welcome to the virtual juror, where snark is reality, but evidence is royalty. Where at first we look at the FACS, or facts and conjecture shared, before we get into the real stuff. After the official transcript went dark, which usually means the grown-ups are about to bicker, Judge Cannoni and the legal teams settled in for some high-stakes house cleaning that felt less like an elimination trial and more like a high-budget HR meeting in Sidebar 71. Yannetti brought up a tactical point for the upcoming Albert parade, mostly because the prosecution seems terrified the jury might realize there's a more competent investigation happening elsewhere. Since several witnesses have already chatted with a federal grand jury, the one that actually looks at evidence instead of just Lally's PowerPoint slides, the defense wanted to ensure the jury isn't hopelessly confused by the existence of a higher power. Our official Lally to English translation is, "Members of the jury, please ignore the fact that these people already gave sworn testimony to federal agents who don't work for the local DA. Just imagine it happened in a different dimension where neither the prosecution nor the defense exists. Don't pull that thread, the whole case might unravel." The judge's solution? We'll call it a grand jury on whatever date, and pretend it happened in a vacuum. The official translation for the jury: this happened in a different room with people who aren't us, so don't ask questions. We finally discovered that the security issue was apparently a courtroom user, translation, a spectator who forgot they weren't in a YouTube comment section, lacked dignity and decorum. They've been officially banished from Norfolk Superior Court. Gold star for them. The court then tried to offer Karen Reed a personal security detail to protect her from bystanders. Yannetti's response: "No thanks, we're good. Just let her use the private bathroom." It turns out the defense is willing to forgo a human shield if it means Karen doesn't have to wait in line for a stall with people who might hate her. In a touching display of courtroom camaraderie, read everyone wanting to leave, the judge and the lawyers negotiated a Memorial Day schedule that would make a travel agent weep. To accommodate Alan Jackson's California commute and everyone's general desire not to be there, they're working 1 full day and then taking a massive 5-day weekend. Justice is blind, but it clearly has a standing reservation for brunch. Adam Lally, a man who delivers bombshells in the same fiery passion as a guy reading the terms and conditions of a software update, finally dropped his big motion. He wants Aiden, Turtleboy Carney, excluded from the courtroom while certain witnesses testify. Lally's argument was essentially, it's really hard for the Alberts to tell their version of the truth while the man who's been live streaming their mailbox is staring at them. He seemed genuinely shocked that a trial involving a polarized public might involve, well, the public. The judge, however, reminded everyone that Carney has official media credentials now, meaning Lally can't just wish him away like a pesky piece of evidence. She'll hold a formal hearing to decide if Turtleboy gets to stay in the pond or if the prosecution gets the safe space they're so desperately craving. The day ended with Karen Reed getting her own bathroom, a spectator getting the boot, and the legal teams securing a vacation schedule that rivals a European school calendar. But don't let the scheduling talk fool you. With Nicole Albert up next, the prosecution is doing everything possible to keep the courtroom as comfortable as a witness stand can be. But beneath the scheduling talk, the Proctor shadow continues to grow. With Nicole Albert set to testify next, the prosecution is already trying to clear the room of anyone who might make the Albert family uncomfortable. Julie Albert returned to the stand for cross-examination, only to find David Yannetti waiting with a phone bill that turned her definition of the word rarely into a work of historical fiction. If yesterday was about pool parties, today was about a shared family plan that even Verizon would find excessive. Yesterday, Julie swore she rarely speaks to Courtney Proctor, sister of lead investigator Michael Proctor, claiming they're strictly text people. Yannetti then dropped a 67 call in a 7-month span hammer. That's roughly 1 call every 3 days. Julie insisted this qualifies as rare because it's not daily. I guess in Canton, a rare occurrence happens twice a week. At this rate, most people rarely breathe. Yannetti zeroed in on February 1st, the day before Karen Reed was arraigned. On that single day, Julie and Courtney spoke 6 times. While Julie claimed they were just making plans for a birthday, Yannetti didn't seem to buy that they were debating frosting flavors while a homicide investigation was in full swing. Yannetti then shifted to the whereabouts of her son Colin. After some visible confusion and a failed attempt to claim he left early, Julie was forced to admit the truth. Colin, the Voldemort of official police reports, was indeed at the house where a body was found after midnight on the 29th. Finally, Yannetti highlighted the integrity of Julie's police interview. Despite being very close with the Proctor family, Julie sat for an interview with Trooper Proctor himself, 13 days after the death. It wasn't a standard witness statement. It was a chat between a trooper, his sister's bestie, and his nephew's former nanny. Julie Albert's testimony hit a wall where forensic data met selective memory. To Julie, 67 calls is occasional chatting. To the defense, it's a high-speed data link between the crime scene and the state police. By the time Yannetti sat down, the Dunkin' Donut delivery woman looked less like a casual witness and more like a central switchboard for the Proctor Albert Communications Network.
In any case, you were interviewed at 5:30 p.m. on February 10th, correct?
Correct.
Where did that interview take place?
At my home in Canton.
Who was present for that interview?
Me, my husband, Trooper Proctor, and Trooper Bukaki.
Adam Lally stepped up for some emergency rebranding, attempting to pivot Julie Albert from a co-conspirator on speed dial back to a suburban mom who just really likes Dunkin'. Lally tackled the 67-call bombshell by suggesting Julie is simply a social butterfly, and 67 calls in 6 months is actually rookie numbers. The logic here is that Julie claimed she talks to her other besties even more than she talks to Courtney Proctor, implying that 67 calls isn't a conspiracy. It's just a light Tuesday for the Canton PTA. Lally then asked the million-dollar question. Did they ever discuss the investigation? Julie gave a firm no, implying they spent those dozens of hours exclusively discussing birthday candles and winter pool maintenance. To scrub the Proctor stain off her testimony, Lally highlighted that Julie met with new investigators in 2024, ones she isn't related to by friendship. She handed over her phone, voluntarily, which Lally framed as the ultimate sign of a clean conscience. Of course, the defense would argue it's the sign of someone who knows exactly where the delete button is. In a desperate attempt to fix the messy morning timeline, Lally asked about the weather. Again. Julie confirmed she's a fast walker when it's cold. The prosecution's goal was to show that if Julie was speedwalking to escape the frost, those suspicious 5-minute gaps in her story aren't missing time. They're just a cardio workout. Lally's redirect was a valiant effort to convince the jury that calling the lead investigator's sister every 3 days is totally normal social behavior. In the Commonwealth's world, Julie is just a coffee-delivering, fast-walking aunt who happened to stumble into a series of unfortunate coincidences. Julie has officially exited the building, leaving the jury to decide if those 67 calls were used to make party plans or to coordinate a defense. As Julie Albert prepared to make her exit, presumably to go check her call logs, David Yannetti tried one last time to squeeze the Proctor-Albert data plan for a few more drops of scandal. Sidebar 72 was part cleanup crew, part state of the courtroom address, from a judge who is clearly reconsidering her career choices. Yannetti admitted he neglected to grill Julie about her frantic texting sessions with Courtney Proctor during his initial cross. He practically begged to go back in for a recross, promising the jury that those 67 calls were just the appetizer and the numerous texts were the main course. Lally, playing his favorite role as the fun police, threw the outside-the-scope flag. Judge Cannoni, perhaps sensing the jury's heads might actually explode if they had to hear one more Albert family group chat, slammed the door shut. No text receipts for you, Yannetti. You had your shot. Judge Cannoni, officially reaching her limit with the Groundhog Day nature of the testimony, gave Lally a gentle nudge, read a judicial shove, to stop boring everyone to tears. She requested that the next witness, and every witness until the end of time, skip the 20-minute guided architectural tour of the Waterfall Bar. Our view of the court's stance is we know that there are tables, people sat at them, we know it was snowing, white stuff was falling from the sky, cool. We know there was alcohol, people were drinking in a bar, I'm shocked. And please, for the love of all that is holy, get to the actual plot before the jury starts a mutiny. In a moment of peak judicial nitpicking, the judge revealed she is officially over the attorney-witness introduction dance. She ordered the lawyers to stop starting every cross-examination with the awkward "good morning, we've never met" routine, unless it's legally crucial for the jury to know that the lawyer and the witness didn't share an Uber to the courthouse. The judge wants them to skip the pleasantries and get straight to the character assassination. It's not a blind date, it's a trial. Act accordingly. Because the court was about to dive into a long-winded, soul-crushing hearing on whether Aiden, Turtleboy Carney, should be tossed out of the building, the judge decided to buy the jury's silence with breakfast. She sent them on an early morning recess for bagels and coffee, the judicial symbol for "this next part is going to be incredibly annoying, and I need you to be full of cream cheese to complain about it." While the jurors were carb loading, the lawyers stayed behind to argue whether the First Amendment covers live streaming a witness's front porch. Julie Albert is off the clock, though the defense didn't get their text message cherry on top. Still, they've successfully painted a picture of a rare 67-call friendship that most people don't even have with their own mothers. Now we move to the main event, a hearing to see if the turtle gets to stay in the pond, or if the Alberts get to testify in a Carney-free vacuum. It's high stakes for the gallery, high carbs for the jury, and a high-speed headache for everyone else. With Julie Albert's phone records finally buried, along with our collective patience, the courtroom shifted into a specialized legal gear for a hearing that felt more like a spin-off episode of a reality show nobody asked for. But before the main event, we had Sidebar 73, a high-stakes debate over whether Aiden Carney should be banished from the courtroom while certain witnesses take the stand. Attorney Tim Bradle, who represents Carney in other legal matters, wandered into the sidebar looking like a man who had accidentally walked into the wrong wedding reception. He informed the judge that he was actually there for a completely different client, and only found out about the motion to boot his client because he was sent a text. It was a true Norfolk County moment, an elimination trial where the official legal notifications happen via the same back-channel texting methods that the witnesses used to not coordinate their stories. Alan Jackson, a man who knows exactly which way the camera is pointing at all times, decided that it was time for some social distancing. He requested that Karen Reed be physically removed from the Turtleboy hearing, noting that he didn't like the optic. The judge agreed, effectively giving Karen a hall pass to go hang out in her private bathroom while the boys argued over whether the gallery's most infamous resident is a journalist or a professional nuisance. Adam Lally dropped a little extra seasoning on the motion, confirming that the next witness, Nicole Albert, has concerns about testifying while Carney watches. The prosecution wants people to think this is about witness intimidation and the sanctity of the courtroom. The reality seems to be that the Alberts are more terrified of someone actually fact-checking their testimony in real time. And the defense, well, they're treating this like a First Amendment cage match, one they want absolutely no part of, provided their client's optics remain pristine. To ensure the drama didn't immediately set the internet on fire, the judge ordered the entire hearing, and the record of it, to be sealed. The courtroom was cleared of the jury, the defendant, and even the official court reporter, leaving only the lawyers to handle the Turtleboy problem in the shadows. We've reached the point in the trial where Yannetti is texting the blogger's lawyer, Jackson is protecting his client's vibes, and the judge is trying to balance the Bill of Rights against the Albert family's collective nervous breakdown. While the jury continues to carb load on taxpayer-funded bagels, the court is desperately trying to decide if the man who coined Canton Cover-up is a member of the Fourth Estate, or just a distraction that needs to be parked in the hallway next to the vending machines. Well, Canoni, at least, sealed it away from the Karen Reed case, but we were still able to watch it. In a classic display of Norfolk-style judicial hide-and-seek, the big showdown over whether Turtleboy would be booted from the gallery vanished faster from the record than a Brian Albert phone log. Because Judge Canoni decided this First Amendment cage match technically belonged in a completely different case file, the transcript goes conveniently silent just as things were getting spicy. If you were looking for the official play-by-play, you're out of luck. This brand of courtroom drama is filed under Not Our Problem for now. However, since Norfolk-level transparency usually involves a few missing pages and a trust me bro attitude, we reviewed this secret hearing anyway. After all, it was still streamed. Here's what happened while the jury was munching on their own please don't hate us taxpayer-funded bagels. The Commonwealth wants the man who wrote the book, or at least 300 articles, on the Canton Cover-up, banished from the courtroom whenever an Albert or a McCabe takes the stand. Attorney Tim Bradel kicked things off by pointing out the government's unique definition of due process involves giving him less than an hour's notice on a 6-page motion. Apparently, the prosecution snuck behind his back, serving the Associated Press days ago, but forgetting to notify the actual attorney of record until he literally walked into the building. It's the legal surprise party where the guest of honor is also the guy being sued. Bradel didn't just argue. He brought the legal receipts via res judicata, which is fancy Latin for we already did this, you lost, stop asking. It's the judicial equivalent of a parent saying, I already said no. And no, a second tantrum won't change the answer. You don't get a do-over just because you didn't like the first result. Bradel immediately reminded the court that 2 other judges, Krupp and Pomerol, have already looked at this exact issue. Both ruled that while Carney has stay-away orders in the real world, the courtroom is a neutral zone where his First Amendment rights as a journalist trump a witness's icky personal feelings. Bradel essentially told the prosecution to stop trying to reboot the Exclude Turtleboy movie, when the first 2 directors already gave it a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes. Adam Lally leaned heavily on his favorite buzzword, witness intimidation. His logic? If Nicole Albert is too nervous to talk because the man who questioned her lawn care choices is in the front row, she might struggle to remember her testimony, more than she already does. Therefore, Karen Reed doesn't get a fair trial, even though he never once argued about fairness for Karen Reed. Bradel fired back that the witness intimidation statute is a legal abomination, and that witness concern has zero legal materiality. He argued Carney shouldn't be punished simply because he asked the pointed questions the police seemingly forgot to ask. Surprising absolutely no one, Judge Cannoni tipped her hand early. While she acknowledged Carney is a certified member of the press, she ruled that his presence might have a chilling effect on the inner circle's ability to tell their version of the truth. The judge officially issued a no turtles allowed order. Carney must hit the bricks when the following people take the stand. The Alberts, who include Chris, Nicole, Brian Jr., and the ever-elusive Colin. The McCabe's, Jennifer, and Matt, who are the see no evil, hear no evil duo. 2 from the investigation, Michael Proctor and Yuri Buchanan, because evidently even seasoned detectives get the chills, and the rest, which is Julie Nagel. The one silver lining for Carney, he's been benched, but not ejected. The judge ruled that unlike the rest of the press pool, who could lose their seats if they so much as sneeze in the hallway, he'll be allowed to reclaim his spot the moment these witnesses are done. Presumably, he can live stream his thoughts from the sidewalk in the meantime. So Turtleboy is officially in timeout whenever a member of the inner circle takes the stand. It turns out that in Norfolk County, the First Amendment is a limited time offer that expires the moment a McAlbert feels a draft. The Proctor shadow may be growing, but the Turtleboy shadow just got legally relocated to the hallway. With Turtleboy successfully banished to the hallway, Nicole Albert, the former matriarch of 34 Fairview, stepped up to deliver the Commonwealth's favorite bedtime story. A perfectly normal family night that just happened to conclude with a body on the front lawn. Nicole established her longtime Canton credentials before recounting the friendly birthday party for her son, Brian Jr., at the Waterfall Bar. According to her, the McCabe's, Higgins, and the O'Keefe-Reed duo were all vibing beautifully. Karen and John weren't just fine, they were great. Hardly the profile of a couple destined for a fatal driveway blowout. The narrative shifted to 34 Fairview, where Nicole allegedly sat at her kitchen table, waiting for the party to start. In a stunning display of selective observation, she testified that while the McCabe's and Brian Higgins showed up, she never saw John O'Keefe or Karen Reed enter the house, or even the driveway. Apparently, a black Lexus SUV is a stealth vehicle in the Albert world. The night ended with a 2 a.m. bedtime and a very loud wake-up call. Nicole described her sister Jennifer McCabe bursting into the bedroom around 6 a.m., screaming, "He's out in the snow!" Nicole's first thought was her own children, only later realizing the he was the man she supposedly never saw arrive. Nicole Albert's testimony is the ultimate see no evil script. She was at the bar, at the table, and in the bed, yet managed to miss a car, a body, and the sound of a 200-pound man being struck by a vehicle 30 feet from her pillow. The prosecution sees an innocent homeowner shocked by tragedy. The defense sees the protector of a mystery whose sister conveniently burst in with the news before the police could even knock. As Nicole Albert began to describe the chaotic moment her morning went from peaceful slumber to Canton catastrophe, the defense threw a yellow flag and returned to the bench for Sidebar 74. It turns out that even when your sister is bursting into your bedroom to announce a body is on your lawn, you still have to follow the rules of evidence. Imagine that. Nicole was just getting to the juicy part, quoting her sister Jennifer McCabe's frantic cameo appearance, where she allegedly screamed, "He's out in the snow," when Miss Little shouted objection with the speed of a woman who has heard enough McCabe dialogue to last a lifetime. The defense's argument was simple. You can't just repeat what someone else said to prove it actually happened. That's hearsay 101. But Adam Lally, attempting to be a legal gymnast, hurried to the bench to argue that Jennifer's words weren't being offered for the truth, but rather to explain the effect on the listener. Honestly, that's a lucky break for the prosecution, considering the truth has been a moving target in this case since day one. In Lally speak, Jen's shouting was the verbal GPS that physically recalibrated Nicole from asleep to standing on the stairs, where she could finally notice the flashing lights of the investigation she claims she never heard arriving. Judge Cannoni, who looks about 5 minutes away from muting the entire courtroom, wasn't interested in a deep dive into the state of mind exception. She gave Lally the judicial equivalent of a just get on with it hand wave. The judge compromised, in essence telling Lally to stop trying to be Shakespeare. Just ask what happened next. If Nicole accidentally mentions her sister told her the cops were downstairs, the judge was willing to look the other way for the sake of the narrative flow, and to ensure we all get to go home before the next leap year. This sidebar was a classic legal tango over how much he said, she said the jury is allowed to consume. Lally wanted the high-stakes drama of the bedroom burst to distract from the lack of actual evidence, while the defense wanted to strip the morning down to a dry sequence of movements, minus the theatrical screaming. To the prosecution, the screaming sister is the excited utterance that kicks off a tragedy. To the defense, it's more hearsay from a family who seems to communicate almost exclusively through bursts, 2 a.m. deletions, and 67 rare phone calls. Nicole Albert continued her tour of the morning Canton stood still, while the defense team stood up every 30 seconds with a sustained stamp for nearly every sentence she uttered. According to Nicole, Jen McCabe performed the first ever Canton wake-up call, bursting into the bedroom in a state of hysteria. Apparently, it took several rounds of high-stakes guessing before Jen finally dropped the name John, reminding Nicole he was that guy from the bar, in case she'd already forgotten the guest of honor she'd allegedly invited over. Still in her pajamas, Nicole headed downstairs to find the front door already halfway open and Officer Lenk of the Canton PD waiting in the foyer. She peeked out at the guys standing in the snow, though she somehow didn't recall seeing anything as inconspicuous as a flashing ambulance or a fire truck. The house quickly transitioned from a birthday venue to a police briefing. The inner circle, Nicole, Brian, Jen, and Matt, sat at the dining room table with Officer Lenk for 45 minutes. Nicole claimed they welcomed the talk, which is easy to do when you're being interviewed by the home team. Once the local cops left, with a casual "someone will be in touch," Nicole tried to recount her follow-up interrogation of Jen, but the defense team, led by Miss Little, deployed a flurry of hearsay objections that the judge sustained. The Commonwealth was working overtime to frame the Alberts as the helpful neighbors of the year, opening their hearts and dining chairs to investigators while a body was being recovered mere feet away. The prosecution sees innocent cooperation. The defense sees a 45-minute head start on coordinating the narrative before the state police could even find their boots. Thanks to the defense's very effective hearsay shield, the only thing missing from that dining room table was a transcript of what, or who, was actually discussed. As the morning of January 29th unfolded in the Albert family dining room, Adam Lally tried to get Nicole to describe the post-police shock session. Specifically, he wanted the jury to hear the frantic questions Nicole peppered her sister with once the cruisers rolled away, and the coordination could begin in earnest, leading to Sidebar 75. Lally argued that Nicole testifying about the questions she asked aren't hearsay, because technically it's her own voice. He promised the judge he'd tell Nicole to keep Jen's answers a secret, effectively offering the jury the equivalent of listening to one side of a very suspicious phone call in a public bathroom. According to Lally, it's not hearsay if she's talking to herself in the general direction of her sister. Miss Little wasn't buying what Lally was selling. She pointed out the glaringly obvious. An out-of-court statement is an out-of-court statement, whether it ends in a period or a question mark or an OMG delete this. To the defense, letting Nicole recount her own questions is just a backdoor way to imply what the answers were, and they aren't about to let the McAlbert group chat go live in open court without a fight. If the jury hears Nicole ask, "Why is there a person on my lawn?" they're going to assume Jen didn't answer with a sourdough recipe. Judge Cannoni sided with the defense, giving Lally a classic evidentiary participation trophy. She ruled that Nicole could testify to what she did as a result of the conversation, but she can't quote the script. The judge has officially turned Nicole Albert's testimony into a game of legal charades. She can tell the jury she was shocked, with jazz hands for emphasis. She can show them she moved from the table to the couch. Insert confused homeowner look. But she's forbidden from repeating the frantic "what's going on" interrogation she launched at her sister. To the prosecution, these questions show a family in genuine crisis. To the defense, it's a filtered narrative where Nicole gets to play the clueless homeowner, while the real juicy details stay locked behind a hearsay objection. Nicole can show the jury her shocked face, but she can't tell them why her sister had all the answers. Nicole Albert spent the morning guiding the jury through the layout of 34 Fairview, the only house in America where a body on the lawn is less interesting than a bit about donuts. Around 8:30 a.m., Julie Albert pulled into the driveway to drop off birthday donuts for Brian Jr. In a classic Canton coincidence, Brian Albert caught her at the car, and once she realized the front lawn had transitioned from a yard to a crime scene, she stayed for 2 hours. Nothing says happy birthday like sprinkles and yellow police tape. Lally finally addressed the four-legged elephant, or dog, in the room, Chloe, the German Shepherd mix. According to Nicole, Chloe followed a strict pajama routine. Up to bed with the couple, a quick bathroom break in a fenced-in yard where she definitely didn't see or bite anything, and then straight back to sleep. The defense wants you to think that Chloe was a nipper. The Alberts want you to believe she has the bladder control and temperament of a saint. The jury viewed 8 photos of the property, featuring the cluttered garage, too full for cars apparently, and a mysterious electrical box. Nicole claimed that in 12 years the family never understood or used this box. In Canton, if you don't understand it, it doesn't exist. A philosophy they seem to apply to most things that happened that night. Addressing the fleeing the scene theory, Nicole insisted selling 34 Fairview was a pre-planned financial move. They allegedly talked to a realtor in 2021 because a 5-bedroom house was too much to maintain. The fact that they moved out after a body was found on the lawn is, according to Nicole, a total nothing burger. In a single morning, the Albert house hosted a 45-minute police chat, a hysterical sister, a donut delivery, and a dog who apparently sleeps through everything. To the prosecution, this is a family shocked by a snowstorm tragedy. To the defense, it's a house full of people sitting around getting their story straight while their dog, who definitely didn't bite anyone, was tucked safely upstairs. Or was she? Liza Little took the podium for the defense and immediately began peeling back the cozy family wallpaper to reveal the combat-ready drywall beneath. Nicole confirmed that during their hour at the waterfall, John and Karen were in good spirits with zero tension. More importantly, she didn't see Karen stumbling or slurring. Of course, Nicole quickly deployed the "we didn't actually speak" disclaimer, because admitting the defendant looked perfectly sober is a bridge too far for the inner circle. Little pulled up Exhibit W, a surveillance screenshot featuring Brian Albert and Brian Higgins in what most humans would call a fighting stance. In Nicole's version, they were just fooling around, a phrase she clung to like a life raft in a hurricane. In the defense's version, it was an 11:30 p.m. pregame for a 2-man wrecking crew. The snark hit a fever pitch when Little suggested Brian Albert was a highly trained fighter. Nicole looked genuinely offended, offering a flat absolutely not. Apparently, in Nicole's reality, a 30-year veteran of the Boston Police Department learns less about hand-to-hand combat than a pacifist monk. When Little pushed for details on Brian's boxing resume, Lally developed a sustained reflex, sprinting to the sidebar to prevent any mention of the patriarch's pugilistic past. The defense is rebranding the birthday party as a fight night training camp. To Nicole, her husband is a retired cop who has never seen a boxing glove and was just playfully squaring up at the bar. To the defense, he's a trained boxer caught on camera warming up his hands for a main event that ended on his front lawn. According to Nicole, the only thing being hit that night were the high notes of happy birthday. According to the graininess of Exhibit W, the jury might have a different opinion. Just as Miss Little was about to dig into Brian Albert's past, Adam Lally threw the relevance flag, prompting another trip to the bench for Sidebar 76, where the debate shifted from birthday party to boxing resume. Apparently, discussing whether the man of the house is a human weapon is irrelevant in an elimination trial potentially involving a brawl. Who knew? Little argued that Nicole Albert was being a bit imaginative with her husband's history. According to the defense, Nicole's claim that Brian has no experience, or her general amnesia regarding him being able to throw a punch, goes directly to her credibility. If she can't remember her husband is a brawler, what else is she forgetting? Judge Cannoni pointed out the obvious. Brian Albert, the man who actually owns the fists in question, is the next witness. She initially questioned why Little needed to get this information from the wife when the highly trained fighter himself was waiting in the wings. Here's the thing, though. They're allowed to. Little revealed her game plan. She wanted to ask if Nicole knew about Brian's boxing training and the fighting skills he polished during his time in the military. She argued that Nicole was being cagey about the boxing, which Lally, the self-appointed defender of the Albert narrative apparently, denied with his usual weary enthusiasm. The judge decided to let it in, with a warning. She noted that Nicole's real issue seemed to be the phrase highly skilled. Apparently in Canton, you aren't highly skilled unless you're wearing a championship belt while testifying. The judge agreed to let Little ask 2 more questions about Brian's general training, just to see if Nicole could manage to admit her husband knows how to make a fist. It seems the term highly trained is the new rarely in this trial. According to Nicole, Brian might have fooled around with some gloves, or maybe saw a Rocky movie once, but he's basically a pacifist who happened to be in the military. To the defense, he's a man with a military pedigree and specialized boxing skills who was caught on camera practicing his technique hours before a man was found dead on his lawn. Lally wants to keep the image of Brian Albert as a retired family man who just spars for the cardio. The defense wants the jury to realize that when Brian Albert spars, people might tend to stay down. Miss Little continued the grilling, successfully pivoting from boxing to a series of selective memory moments that made the witness stand feel like an interrogation room. Nicole finally conceded that Brian Albert likely received defensive tactics training from both the Marines and the Boston Police. However, she remained linguistically stubborn, claiming she didn't know what fighting experience from the military meant. Apparently, in Nicole's dictionary, the Marines are basically a high-end marching band. In a classic case of suburban amnesia, Nicole explained why she forgot to mention her husband's black Ford Edge when listing their vehicles. Her excuse? 5 kids and a lot of cars. Little wasn't buying it, noting that this specific car is a central figure in the defense's theory. Nicole eventually admitted she'd heard it talked about. Mostly, one assumes, because it's the vehicle the defense thinks John O'Keefe actually entered. Nicole's story about nephew Colin shifted to a near collision in the doorway. She admitted she didn't see his ride outside in the cold and actually witness him leaving. She just assumed he vanished into the night like a teenage Houdini. The defense finally sank their teeth into Chloe, the 70-pound German Shepherd mix. Nicole admitted Chloe sent 2 women to the hospital in May 2022, just 4 months after John O'Keefe was found with arm wounds that looked suspiciously like teeth marks. And shortly after the incident, the family rehomed their pet of 6 years to Vermont. Nicole snapped that the dog wasn't missing, just enjoying the fresh mountain air far away from forensic swabs. Nicole Albert's cross-examination was a masterclass in unintentional omissions. She forgot the one car that might implicate her husband, and tried to paint her 70-pound dog as a sweetheart, right before admitting the animal had an ER-level track record. To the defense, the birthday party looks like a crime scene cleanup. The house was sold, the fighter husband was sparring on camera, and the dog with the bite history was shipped across state lines just as the investigation reached a boiling point. As the cross-examination of Nicole Albert reached a fever pitch over the relocation of Chloe the German Shepherd, who was arguably rehomed more times than a witness in the Witness Protection Program, the lawyers huddled at the bench for Sidebar 77 to bicker over who gets the gold star for finding the dog. Miss Little was worried that Nicole's snarky comment, insinuating the defense already had the Vermont info, made it look like the Commonwealth was being a bastion of transparency. Little wanted to set the record straight. This information didn't come from the friendly neighborhood discovery packet sent by Lally with a bow on top. It came from the federal grand jury minutes. You know, the investigation that actually asked some hard questions. Lally pointed out the obvious with his trademark shrug. It was provided to you. In Lally's world, the source doesn't matter. Whether the info was hand-delivered by an FBI agent or found in a fortune cookie is irrelevant, as long as the defense knew where the dog was. Little, however, wasn't about to let the jury think the prosecution was being helpful when they were actually playing a game of evidentiary hide-and-seek. She wanted to score points for government obfuscation. But Lally was too busy pretending the prosecution wasn't just riding the Fed's coattails. Judge Cannoni was officially over the who sent what drama. She told Little she wasn't going to split hairs over whether the info fell off a federal truck or was gifted by the state. Since the defense clearly had it, the judge saw no reason to let the jury peek behind the curtain at the bureaucratic nightmare of dual investigations. In the world of Canton logic, it doesn't matter if the FBI, the local DA, or a psychic found the dog. As long as Chloe is living her best life in Vermont, everyone is supposed to be happy. The defense is still convinced the Commonwealth is hiding the ball, and possibly the dog. The judge has decided that as long as the ball is currently in Vermont with Chloe, it's time to move on before the jury starts a Free Chloe petition. For the prosecution, the dog is gone. For the defense, the dog was exported. And for the judge, it's just another Friday afternoon in a trial that has officially gone to the dogs. Liza Little continued dismantling Nicole Albert's normal night narrative, replacing the image of a cozy kitchen chat with a suspicious game of musical chairs. Nicole doubled down on the idea that 34 Fairview is a literal fortress of solitude. Despite a group of adults hanging out just feet away, she heard absolutely nothing from the front lawn. No crashes, no screeching brakes, and zero screaming. Apparently, a 200-pound man can be fatally struck outside her window, but Nicole was so dedicated to her cleaning that she wouldn't notice a jet landing in the driveway. Little pulled out the heavy artillery. Nicole's July 2023 federal grand jury testimony, conducted, as Little snarkily noted, in a room where Lally had no power. While today Nicole claimed everyone was cozy at the kitchen table, she admitted to the feds that she actually had no idea where her husband, Brian Albert, or Brian Higgins were, showing a discrepancy in her testimony. Under pressure, she conceded the two Brians, the sparring duo, had left the room and were outside of her view, while she was busy with the dishes, giving them a window of opportunity alone. In a tactical strike, Little had Nicole confirm that the basement door is a mere 4 to 5 steps from the front door. The implication was subtle. While the wives were distracted by the housework, the men were conveniently out of view near a staircase that leads to a private cellar. Little closed by catching Nicole in a timeline pivot regarding who actually left the house last. Today, Nicole named her daughter Caitlin as the final guest. Little pointed out that this wasn't the story she told Sergeant Lank on the morning of the tragedy. In the Albert house, the facts seemed to have a shorter shelf life than the birthday donuts. To the defense, Nicole's cleaning is the ultimate alibi. It conveniently explains why she didn't see the car, didn't hear the fight, and didn't notice the men disappearing. Little has successfully planted the seed. While the women were at the table, the highly trained fighters were just a few steps away from a basement door and a very dark mystery. Just as Liza Little was about to hit Nicole Albert with her own words from the morning of the tragedy, Adam Lally sprinted to Sidebar 78 to play the role of document hall monitor. Lally wasn't necessarily blocking the information. He knows the words are out there, but he was very protective over the branding. He took great offense to Little calling the document Nicole's statement. In Lally's world, there's a massive legal canyon between the witness's signed confession and a cop's frantic scribbles after a 6 a.m. bedroom burst. Lally's logic? If the words make Nicole look bad, blame the officer's penmanship. He conceded that Little could use the report to refresh Nicole's obviously fading memory. But he didn't want the jury thinking Nicole had sat down and typed out her own memoir of the morning's events. Heaven forbid we hold anyone to the words they said before the legal team arrived. Little, seemingly unbothered by the semantic slap on the wrist, offered a quick, "I won't do that again," accompanied by, we can only assume, as an internal eye roll, and prepared to dive back into the timeline trap she had set for the former Lady of Fairview. This sidebar was a classic exercise in legal hair-splitting. Lally wanted to ensure any inconsistencies between Nicole's testimony today and her words on January 29th can be blamed on the officer's note-taking skills, rather than Nicole's relationship with the truth. Little wants to present the receipts of a story that has shifted more than a manual transmission. To the defense, it's a record of a shifting narrative. To the prosecution, it's just a supplemental report that shouldn't be taken too literally, much like the rest of the investigation. Either way, the stage is set for Nicole to explain why her recollection of who left her house last has changed more than the Canton weather. Back at the podium, Liza Little continued to pick apart Nicole Albert's elastic memory, focusing on why the guest list she gave the police in 2022 has miraculously expanded in 2024. Little used Sergeant Lank's initial report to point out a massive timeline glitch. Back in the shock of the morning, Nicole told Lank her daughter Caitlin left around 12:15 a.m. Today, Caitlin is the night owl who stayed until 2 a.m. Nicole's explanation? Sergeant Lank must have misconstrued their kitchen table chat. Apparently, in Canton, police reports are just choose-your-own-adventure novels written by confused officers. Nicole admitted the family discussed the case at length before talking to law enforcement. While she claims they were just figuring things out, the defense framed it as a tactical huddle to get the script ready before their family friend, Trooper Proctor, arrived 6 days later. The snark peaked when Little asked why Nicole completely forgot to mention her nephew Colin during the formal interview with Proctor. She used the excuse that she didn't consider him part of the group because they only crossed paths for a second. The reality is that Colin was allegedly walking out the door at the exact moment John O'Keefe was purportedly arriving. Despite this incredible timing, Nicole insisted she didn't even think the police would want to talk to the teenager who was at the house during a suspicious death. Little suggested she was shielding the kids. Nicole gave a flat "not true," maintaining that omitting the next generation of Alberts was just a casual oversight. In Nicole's world, a police interview is just a confusing conversation, where the cops get everything wrong and your nephew, the one present during the critical window, is a brief interaction not worth the ink. The prosecution sees a traumatized aunt with a fuzzy memory. The defense sees the family's chief of information control, ensuring Trooper Proctor didn't have to bother the kids with any pesky questions. Nicole was settling into her comfortable "I didn't hear a thing" rhythm when the defense decided it was time for a courtroom upgrade, but needed to ask for permission first in Sidebar 79. Since the Commonwealth's official crime scene photos have the clarity of a haunted Polaroid taken at the bottom of a well, Liza Little decided to bring in the heavy machinery, or at least a more accurate chalk. Little requested permission to show Nicole a demonstrative scale replica of 34 Fairview. Her argument? The actual crime scene photos were, to put it politely, not the best. A Canton understatement. In reality, they're about as helpful as a map drawn in disappearing ink. The defense wants the jury to actually see the special reality of the property, specifically how the flagpole, the basement door, and the street were practically sitting in each other's laps. It's harder to maintain the clueless homeowner persona when you're staring at a to-scale reminder that the tragedy occurred approximately 3 miniature inches from your front door. Adam Lally didn't fight the model, presumably because even he realizes the current photos look like they were taken through a screen door. But he did set a condition. As long as Nicole took a look at this dollhouse of doom and agreed it resembled her home, he'd allow it. The judge ruled that the model wouldn't be a permanent piece of evidence, but rather a chalk, a temporary visual aid designed to help the witness explain her testimony, or in this case, help the defense expose the laws of physics. It was officially marked as Exhibit X for identification, because apparently we're running out of letters for all the things the initial investigation missed. The defense is literally rebuilding the crime scene in front of the jury's eyes, because the official police photos left a lot to the imagination. By bringing in a replica, Little is making it incredibly awkward for Nicole to claim she was miles away in the kitchen while a blizzard of activity unfolded just outside her window. For the prosecution, it's just a map, but don't look too closely at the distances. For the defense, it's a way to prove that unless the Albert house was built with soundproof lead and blackout curtains, there's no way Nicole missed the chaos on her lawn. It's a pesky reminder to the Alberts of a night they'd rather forget. It's a potential reality check for the jury, and for the rest of us, it's the most accurate piece of evidence we've seen so far, mostly because it wasn't produced by the Canton PD or MSP. After the Sidebar interlude, Liza Little continued her tour of the high-security fortress, known as 34 Fairview, using the defense's new scale model to prove that Nicole's bedroom wasn't just near the crime scene, it was the front row balcony. Using Exhibit X, Little pointed out that Nicole's bedroom sat in the upper left quadrant of the house, with the 2 windows staring directly at the patch of grass where John O'Keefe was found freezing to death. Despite being mere feet from a full-scale emergency response, Nicole claimed she heard and saw absolutely nothing. Their alibi? My blinds were shut and the curtains were closed. It seems in Canton, a heavy set of drapes is a more effective barrier against sound and light than a lead-lined bunker. No sirens, no flashing lights, no fire trucks. Just a peaceful, shutter-locked silence of someone who definitely doesn't want to look outside. Nicole had been clinging to a 6 a.m. bedroom burst timeline, but when Little pointed out that surveillance footage suggests Jen McCabe didn't actually arrive until 6:45 a.m., Nicole's vivid memory suddenly turned into a shrug. "If that's what you say," she offered, retreating into the safe harbor of "I wasn't quite sure," a popular vacation spot for witnesses this week. Little then brought the receipts from the Celebrite data. Phone records show Nicole received and answered 2 calls from Jen McCabe, one at 6:07 and one at 6:08. The exact moment the body was being discovered. Nicole continued to respond with a flat, "I never answered any phone calls from my sister that morning." We've officially reached the quantum physics portion of the trial. According to Nicole, she was so sound asleep that even a fleet of sirens and a ringing phone couldn't pierce her curtain-induced coma. To the defense, however, Nicole's phone was busy having a full conversation while she was allegedly unconscious. As the defense tried to confront Nicole Albert with the digital ghosts of 6 a.m., Adam Lally once again suited up as the guardian of the paperwork in Sidebar 80. He questioned how Nicole could possibly be expected to understand the technical sorcery of a phone extraction report, as if reading a call log required a PhD in quantum mechanics. Lally's objection was rooted in the mystical art of authentication. He argued that Nicole couldn't be expected to testify to a Cellebrite report from someone else's device, likely her sister Jennifer's. In the Commonwealth's view, if the forensic data says Nicole answered, but Nicole says she was dreaming about soundproof curtains, the data must be the one that's confused. I guess in Norfolk County, satellite-synced forensic evidence is merely a difference of opinion when it contradicts the Albert family's collective nap schedule. Liza Little was quick to remind the court that Lally had absolutely no problem using these exact types of reports when they suited his narrative. She wanted to use the records to refresh Nicole's suspiciously selective memory regarding two very specific, very answered calls at 6:07 and 6:08 a.m., the exact moments the hysteria was supposedly peeking outside her window. Judge Cannoni, sensing the tension and likely the urgent need for a judicial espresso, ruled that Little could show Nicole the report to see if it jogged her memory. However, she warned Little not to bake the answered part into the question as an established fact. Since the witness already issued a firm no, we have to pretend the phone might have just butt answered itself out of sheer boredom. This is the choose-your-own-adventure portion of the testimony. Do you believe the satellite-synced forensic data, which is governed by physics, timestamps, and cold hard logic? Or do you believe the witness who claims she was a sleeping beauty until her sister burst into the room 40 minutes later to ruin the vibes? The judge is letting the defense show Nicole the receipts, but Lally is making sure everyone knows that in his world a phone record is just a suggestion, especially if it suggests someone was awake when they were already committed to being unconscious. As the lunch break loomed, the defense attempted to pin Nicole Albert down with the digital receipts of Exhibit Y, a Cellebrite report suggesting her morning was significantly more chatty than she's willing to admit. Liza Little presented data showing two calls from Jennifer McCabe at 6:07 a.m. and 6:08 a.m. Nicole offered a class in passive resistance. She acknowledged the paper says the calls occurred, but flatly denied picking them up. The data shows one call lasted 9 seconds. The second lasted 7 seconds. Nicole continued with her defense by saying, "I never spoke to her on the phone that morning." Apparently, at 34 Fairview, phone durations are just suggestions made by a confused satellite. Little moved to identify the potential culprits who might have intercepted those ghost calls. Nicole confirmed the only conscious beings in the room were herself, her husband, the 30-year Boston police veteran, and Chloe, the German Shepherd. Unless Chloe has evolved the ability to bypass Face ID with her paws, the defense is heavily implying that someone, with a pulse and a narrative to coordinate, was awake and talking while John O'Keefe was being found in the snow. When Little tried to explain the nitty-gritty of tolling records, the digital fingerprints that distinguish a live human conversation from a voicemail, Lally's objection reflex kicked in. Judge Cannoni promptly shut the line of questioning down, keeping the jury in the dark about how telecommunications actually work. In Nicole's world, the laws of physics and Verizon are equally irrelevant. We have 2 calls, 2 durations, and 2 humans in the bed, yet she's sticking to the story that she remained in a shutter-locked coma until her sister physically materialized in her bedroom 40 minutes later. To the prosecution, the records are a confusing technicality. To the defense, those 16 seconds are the smoking gun of a family getting their story straight before the siren even wailed. The afternoon session kicked off with a classic game of What Letter Is This?, as the defense team tried to move their shiny new toy from the identification shelf, to the evidence locker in Sidebar 81. It seems, when you have enough exhibits to fill a library, the alphabet starts to look like a bowl of scrambled noodles. Liza Little started by trying to admit Exhibit S, only to be stopped in her tracks by the judge and her co-counsel, that they might have the letter wrong. After a brief scramble, they realized they were actually talking about Exhibit X, the scale model graphic of 34 Fairview. Note to self, X marks the spot where the logic usually stops. Adam Lally wasn't about to let this graphic rendering slide into the jury's hands without a warning label. He wanted it explicitly clear that this wasn't a real photograph, but a graphic rendering. He's apparently deeply concerned the jury might think the Alberts lived in a perfectly rendered CGI universe, instead of a drafty 5-bedroom in Canton. You might be playing with fire by making sure the jury knows the only perfect thing about this case is the defense's digital model. But who are we to judge? In a rare and fleeting moment of courtroom harmony, both sides agreed to stipulate, the legal version of a pinky swear, that the exhibit is a digital drawing and not a snapshot from a Nikon. Judge Cannoni, who is clearly finished being the lawyer's personal assistant, told them they'd have to be the ones to announce that fact to the jury. She wasn't going to be their spokesperson for the "this isn't real life" announcement. After some fumbling through the alphabet, the defense successfully got their map of the property into evidence. Lally's fear that the jury might confuse a graphic for a photo is a bit like worrying someone might mistake a Monopoly board for a deed to Atlantic City. But hey, in a trial where misconstrued is the word of the year, and rarely means 67 times, you can't be too careful about people confusing fiction with reality. The defense officially christened their graphic rendering as Exhibit 66, using it to prove that while the Albert home was physically accessible, it was practically vacant when a life was on the line. Nicole confirmed that Jennifer McCabe didn't need to pick a lock to burst into the bedroom because the front door was conveniently unlocked. Nicole brushed this off as a classic "the kids forgot" suburban oversight. To the defense, the house was a wide-open revolving door, unless, of course, you were the man dying on the grass. In a sequence of biting questions, Liza Little forced Nicole to admit the existence of blankets. After Lally's frantic objections forced a semantic downgrade, Nicole finally conceded that yes, the house contained blankets. The subtext was subtle. While John O'Keefe was succumbing to hypothermia, the Alberts had a linen closet full of resources they couldn't be bothered to use. Little saved the sharpest sting for last, pointing out that Nicole was sleeping next to a highly trained first responder, while a tragedy unfolded 30 feet away. Despite having a 30-year BPD veteran in the bed, Nicole's defense remained a stubborn, "we were sound asleep." The Albert curtain defense is strong enough to muffle sirens, flashlights, and the professional soul of a police officer. Liza Little ended her cross-examination with a mic drop. A house full of blankets, a first responder, and unlocked doors, none of which were offered to the man on the lawn. To the prosecution, they're just innocent, heavy sleepers. To the defense, they're clueless, by choice, maintaining a collective coma until Jen McCabe arrived to play the role of a human alarm clock. Adam Lally returned for a quick cleanup mission, attempting to patch the holes Liza Little just poked in the Albert family's peaceful slumber narrative. Lally went straight for the phone records, getting Nicole to confirm, one more time for the people in the back, that no phone call woke her up. He then hit the clueless boomer button, getting her to admit she has no idea how to read a forensic report. Lally's logic is that if Nicole doesn't understand the data must be wrong. And his goal is to convince the jury that the answered label on the report is just a digital hallucination that only a computer could believe. Lally gave Nicole a chance to rebrand the dog disposal as a tragic act of responsibility. Nicole painted a heart-tugging picture of her search for a new home, claiming local shelters wanted to put her down. In essence, she coordinated with a woman in Texas to find a lone owner on a big property in Vermont. And the basic interpretation is that shipping a key piece of forensic evidence across state lines wasn't a cover-up. It was a humanitarian effort to save a Texas rescue dog from a Vermontless fate. Regarding the missing husbands, Nicole pulled back on the mysterious disappearance theory. While she previously told the grand jury she had no clue where the two Bryans went, she now clarified for Lally that they were only gone for a couple minutes. According to the timeline, a relatively short period of time is the official Canton unit of measurement for not long enough for basement shenanigans. In Lally's world, the Alberts are just a family of non-technical deep sleepers who love their dog too much to let her stay in the state. The 16 seconds of calls? A digital glitch. The missing men? A quick bathroom break. And the dog in Vermont? A peaceful retirement for a misunderstood nipper. To the prosecution, Nicole is a consistent witness. To the defense, she's a woman who thinks a couple of minutes is plenty of time to relocate a body, and who expects the jury to believe a German Shepherd can't hear a siren just because the curtains are closed. Liza Little wasn't about to let the Chloe the Rescue Dog PR tour end on a high note. She returned for one last swing at the Albert family's transparency, which currently has the opacity of a brick wall. Little hammered the final nail into the unanswered call coffin. Nicole admitted she wasn't aware of any voicemails left by Jen McCabe during those 6 a.m. calls. According to the defense's math, if there's no voicemail, but the line was open for 9 seconds, somebody wasn't just sleeping, they were listening. In the Albert house, a 9-second glitch apparently involves a lot of heavy breathing and zero talking. Little poked at the suspicious lack of paperwork. No vet records, no rehoming contracts, no missing witness flyers for the 70-pound German Shepherd. Lally jumped in with objections faster than Chloe at a fence line, and the judge struck the question, reminding the jury that curiosity isn't evidence. It hit a fever pitch again when Nicole claimed she did tell the Commonwealth where the dog was. This seemed to be news to the defense, who have been hunting for Chloe like she's a fugitive from justice. When Little asked when this mysterious data transfer occurred, Lally performed a legal sprint to the sidebar to pull the plug. We've officially transitioned from the dog went to a farm to the dog is in a witness protection program. In Nicole's version, she gave the state the address. The defense is just bad at Google Maps. In the defense's version, Chloe is a witness who can't speak, and the Alberts have ensured she's buried so deep in the Vermont woods that no forensic tooth swab will ever find her. To the prosecution, the dog is a non-issue. But to the defense, Chloe is the only one who truly knows what happened on that lawn, and she's currently rehomed in a place where the only thing she has to worry about is maple syrup. Nicole Albert was about to explain exactly when she became a whistleblower on her own dog's location when the lawyers scrambled to the bench for Sidebar 82, which felt more like a critical game of who has the documents. Spoiler alert, nobody in the room actually had them. Adam Lally dropped a bombshell that was less explosive and more sad trombone. Evidently, over the lunch break, the Albert's personal attorney, Gregory Henning, informed him that the documents regarding Chloe was handed over, just not to Lally. The paperwork was sent to the U.S. Attorney's Office, leaving the local DA as in the dark as a Canton street lamp in a blizzard. Lally admitted he's been chasing his own tail, having received exactly 0 dog-related papers in his office. Nicole's "yes, I believe I have" answer was technically true in her mind. She gave it to someone in a suit. But it left Liza Little fuming. The defense has been chasing this dog for months, and finding out the paperwork has been sitting in a federal filing cabinet while they were told it didn't exist is a special kind of Norfolk County gaslighting. Little tried to salvage the moment by asking for a stipulation. a formal agreement, that Nicole never actually gave the info to the Commonwealth or the defense. Lally balked, arguing that a stipulation would make it look like Nicole was hiding something. Her defense? She was never legally ordered to turn it over to them, so it's not hiding. It's just selective sharing. Judge Cannoni, clearly reaching her limit with the Great Vermont Dog Hunt, shut the whole thing down. She wasn't going to let the trial devolve into a debate over federal versus state discovery obligations. To the casual observer, it felt like another classic Canton Cover-up moment. This time, it was hide the puppy. We've reached peak Canton. The witness thinks she's a paragon of transparency because she talked to the feds. The DA admits he's missing the most basic paperwork, and the defense is left staring at an empty dog bowl and a mountain of missing data. Nicole Albert was finally excused, leaving behind a trail of unanswered phone calls, forgotten Ford Edges, and a dog that is officially a ward of the state of Vermont, or the FBI, depending on which agency's voicemail you're currently stuck in. As Nicole Albert stepped down, the Commonwealth summoned the patriarch himself. 30-year Boston police veteran, recently retired from the Fugitive Task Force unit, Brian Albert. If the prosecution wanted a rock-solid witness, they got a man whose memory is as disciplined as a military parade, at least for the parts that don't involve his front lawn. Albert kicked things off with a somber travelogue, a trip to New York City for a fallen officer's funeral, returning in a vehicle with Brian Higgins and his brother, Canton Detective Kevin Albert. On the commute, he picked up his work vehicle, the now infamous Ford Edge, in Charlestown, and met Higgins for a pre-game drink at the Hillside Pub. Following a text from Nicole, he transitioned from the pub to the waterfall around 9:30 p.m. to join the family huddle. Albert described the waterfall atmosphere as fun and cordial. He recalled some light work-related ribbing with John O'Keefe, who allegedly joked that Albert should come work in the sex offender registry unit. Brian noted O'Keefe had no injuries at the bar. Despite being at the same table, he also claimed he had zero interaction with Karen Reed. I guess for a fugitive unit veteran, a woman sitting a few feet away is as invisible as a subpoena. As the bar lights came up, an open invitation was issued for Brian Jr.'s 23rd birthday. Albert drove his wife and daughter home, pulling into 34 Fairview around 12:15 a.m. He acknowledged that Brian Higgins had already arrived in his Jeep, and had even skimmed the driveway with a plow to let Albert park. In Brian Albert's world, the night was a series of orderly, professional transitions. He moved from a funeral, to a pub, to a family gathering with the precision of a man who knows exactly how to write a police report. Naturally, the prosecution sees a rock-solid veteran and a grieving homeowner who was just in a deep slumber, while the defense sees a highly trained officer who arrived in a government-issued SUV just in time to host a party, where the only guest who didn't make it inside ended up dead in the snow. With the clock ticking away towards 4 p.m. on a Friday, the international hour of I don't want to be here anymore, the patriarch was granted temporary parole from the hot seat. The lawyers huddled at the bench for one final round of scheduling Tetris in Sidebar 83, mixed with a bit of judicial film criticism. Judge Cannoni, recognizing that everyone was likely already mentally halfway into a bag of chips and a beer, offered the defense a choice. Start the cross-examination of Brian Albert now, or wait until Monday. Alan Jackson, clearly not wanting to start a marathon in the final 10 minutes of a Friday shift, opted for the weekend breather. Brian gets 48 hours to hydrate before the real grilling begins. The court and David Yannetti spent a few minutes harmonizing their calendars. The judge revealed she was trying to squeeze in some full trial days, while balancing a string of upcoming days off. Ultimately, she decided to give the jury, and the legal teams, another long weekend to keep the peace. In this trial, full-time is a relative term. In a move that screamed, "I've been spending too much time on TikTok," AJ tried to sneak in a detective movie he filmed with his investigator. The plot? A gripping sequence of Jackson himself walking from the bulkhead to the back gate, then to the front yard of 34 Fairview. Judge Cannoni's review was swift and brutal. Rating? 9%. She told Jackson point blank that he couldn't be both the lead attorney and the leading man in his own evidence. Even Lally, who usually delivers objections with the energy of a dial-up modem, managed to agree with the bench on this one. AJ, realizing his directorial debut was headed straight to DVD, agreed to parry and use some still photos instead. Naturally, the rules of evidence don't allow for method acting. The week ended with Brian Albert stepping down and Alan Jackson's cinematography dreams being crushed by the weight of professional boundaries. Turns out that while the defense can rebuild the house in a graphic rendering, they can't turn the lead counsel into an on-screen investigator. The court reminded everyone that this is an elimination trial, not a Sundance entry. Now, Brian Albert gets 2 more days of peace before he has to explain to AJ, the lawyer, not the indie filmmaker, exactly what was happening in that family room while a tragedy was unfolding on his grass. With the jury officially sent home to enjoy their long weekend, the lawyers stayed behind for a bit of housekeeping to ensure Monday morning doesn't immediately dissolve into another Sidebar marathon. Judge Cannoni, apparently planning a very exciting weekend of reading legal briefs, asked if there were any other evidentiary issues she should be prepping for. Lally offered a quiet no, but Yannetti had a few final flags to plant. Yannetti reminded the court that when Brian's daughter Caitlin Albert takes the stand, likely on Monday, the defense is going to want to show some very specific photos. These aren't family vacation shots. They're photos allegedly showing the close personal relationship between Caitlin and Katie McLaughlin, the firefighter she went to high school with. The judge reaffirmed her gatekeeper status. She reminded Yannetti that he isn't to flash any of these BFF photos to the jury without approaching the bench first. She wants to see exactly how much socializing is actually relevant to an elimination trial before it hits the big screen. Lally confirmed that Caitlin is on the menu for Monday, meaning the jury will get a full dose of the next generation of Alberts once they've finished with the patriarch. The court adjourned with a clear warning. Monday is going to be all about connections. Between Brian Albert's 30 years on the force and Caitlin's social circle, the defense is busy building a web of relationships they hope will look like a conflict of interest to the jury. For the prosecution, it's just a family in a small town. For the defense, every brunch photo is a piece of the cover-up puzzle. So, as the judge heads home to review the No Sound Jackson videos and the Caitlin McLaughlin friendship file, we're left with a cliffhanger. Will Brian Albert survive the cross-examination on Monday, or will the Vermont dog papers and the 6:07 a.m. ghost calls finally catch up to him? We'll see you Monday. Bring your own soundproof curtains. Well, that's all we have. So as always, love your family, love your pets, love your neighbors, and we'll see you next time.
Standing here in the shadows of doubt, wheels of fate turning, can't figure it out. Hands are heavy, hearts of stone. This weight I carry, can't do it alone. Eyes of the crowd running through my skin, their whispers loud, where do I begin? One road to mercy, one road to pain. Every choice here leaves a blood stain. Bang, 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 bang. As the virtual juror, what do I choose? Every step forward, there's something to lose. Voices screaming, justice chains, battling fate. What's the price for the call I make? calm. The line between right and wrong is gone, buried deep in the noise of the fight. Is there a way to make this right? Echoes of their pleas fill the air, shattered dreams scattered everywhere. The gavel falls like thunder crashing, can't stop the tide that keeps on smashing. As the virtual juror, what do I choose? Every step forward, there's something to lose. Voices screaming, justice chains, rattling fate. What's the price for the call I make? Yeah. What's the price for